Hello everyone, welcome to Longarming by Jaclyn. My niece has joined a club volleyball team and she has requested a volleyball quilt. And her team colors are like light blue and white and a little navy. So I guess today I'm going to try to design a volleyball block. And I was hoping to be able to use strip sets. So this little section has a little bit more baby blue. This little middle section is more pink. So the first one I want to try is to use these strips. Oh, they're going to be colorful little volleyballs. And can I get away with having the main unit be straight seam strip sets, which means I could make a long section and cut hunks of them, and then just curves on the side? Because a real volleyball is going to have a curved centerpiece that's going to go out, and it's going to have curved seam here, and then straight seam here and here. And then of course you'd have 3 more units coming in this way, 3 units coming in this way, 1 unit on the side, and the outside is a circle. So like, how literal do I have to be for this block to read as a volleyball? And the answer is I do not know. So let's just start with a straight unit. I'm going to make the center strip a little bit wider. I don't have very much of this fabric, and unfortunately I love it. So if I don't like the way this block works out, I suppose I'm gonna have to seam rip and salvage this piece of fabric. But we're gonna try straight seams first for my 3 bands, almost like a fence rail unit, and then curved seams on the side like this. And we'll see if that reads like a volleyball. And then I was thinking, to make it more colorful, I might take different kind of wild colored fabrics for the background of each block. So each volleyball would be on maybe like a wild color background. So do I want to make the volleyballs her team colors and then festive wild color backgrounds? Do I want to maybe keep it more to the team colors, and then I would put more like this, like her team colors volleyballs, and then let the background be just like white, or maybe alternating white and gray? Or do I want to involve, like for me, I would involve some festive colorful colors in the background, but that might be too much. So we'll see. We'll audition and we'll decide. But the most important thing is I want this block to be achievable. I don't want it to be so difficult that this quilt takes me 9 million years, which means it's never gonna get finished. Or I don't want it to, it's still a lot of work to make it in the simplest way possible, and then if it doesn't read as a volleyball, it defeats the purpose. So let's see. I've downloaded some pictures of volleyballs. I just did some screenshots using those as a reference, and I'm sort of developing my template here, and then we'll see what ends up being the final block. I've put this background down mostly so you guys can see on the white table, but assuming I'm using a colorful background, I'm gonna use a 12.5-inch raw block because I have this 12.5-inch ruler, and that'll just make it easy for me to place the blocks. And then for my circle, I have this bowl, and I think that is about the right size. That gives me enough room for seam allowance and then a little bit of background around each volleyball. I have a dinner plate, but it's like way too big. I have a salad plate. It's a little too small. The volleyballs would look puny. So I found this bowl. So I think this is going to be my circle template, and I think this is going to be my block template, and I'm still undecided as if I'm going to go like maybe alternating white and gray. So if I do white and gray on the background, that means I can't use really white and gray in the volleyballs. And if I go colorful on the background, is that going to be too loud and distracting and sort of lose the team color focus? I don't know. We'll see, because I have this fabric and it has got some gray and navy marble looking swirls on a white background. And if I do white backgrounds, I could use this against it's a pretty deep medium gray fabric that I have. So I could use this either in the middle of the volleyball where it's not against the edge, or I could use this against the gray background and just not use this strip against the white background. So I could still go white and gray. Thinking it through. So this is obviously going to be scrappy. People have different definitions of scrappy, and I don't think it's terribly regulated where it really matters that much what you mean. When I say scrappy, I generally mean something I dug out from my stash, not necessarily things that were purchased specifically for that project or that came in a line together specifically, or that I went to the fabric store and picked out together for a particular project. So I guess when people say scrappy, maybe what I mean is stashy. So this is going to be a stashy project. I frequently will break open and raid 2.5 inch strip rolls and pull out the ones I want. I frequently will break open a layer cake, which is a 10-inch pre-cut square set, or the smaller ones, the 5-inch squares, also called charm squares by some brands. Anyways, so I have a lot of opened pre-cuts that are no longer a set because I pull the colors I want to do the job I'm trying to do for a particular quilt. Here is the first unit, and I did straight seams. That would allow me to do a big long strip set and cut hunks and get more mileage out of a strip set. And let's say, I'm going to go ahead and use this smaller, I believe this is a 28mm rotary cutter. If anyone knows where to get blades at a good price for this thing, I need some blades. So the outer volleyball is going to be this size. Let's measure that. That is, which way is the one? Here's the one. So from the outer edge of this bowl to the outer edge of this is 9 and a little bit. Right about 9 1/4. So the whole circle is going to be this big, but a volleyball is going to have those curved pieces going this direction, opposite of the fence rail unit in the middle. You know what, let's try my regular blade. Oh yeah, oops, that cuts like a dream. Gets right in there. Good enough. You're going to want to go slowly. So if I use the same curve, and then when I do my outer little piece here, I'll just do the same curve but a little bit over. So if this whole thing is like 9-ish, then this middle unit, let's make it like, is 6 too narrow? There's 6, there's 7. Maybe we'll make this like 7, which I believe is the width of this ruler. Yes, it is. Okay, so I'll cut the curve. We're just figuring this out. We're figuring out the template as we go along. This chalk is good bad. It's a great marking tool, but it's not real sharp. So you can see it's not super close. It's like a 1/4 inch away from my ruler. So I'm just going to use that as a general gist. We'll come in here, and I know I have to be short of that to be at my measurement. These don't all have to be exactly the same. Just has to look good from the back of a moving horse. I do want to make sure it's sort of on the same axis here. All right, that looks pretty good. It's gonna be close enough. Things that look a little handmade, I think, is good for a quilt. So there's that. Okay, so for as wide as this is, how wide is this? So I did, these are off of a pre-cut strip, so they're 2.5. This one I did 3.5 just because I did. So this whole thing is about 7. And I think that's too, is that too circular? No, it's got a pretty good flat on the top and bottom. Okay, so we did kind of a 7 by 7. Curves on the sides, flats on the top and bottom. And because I used a circle on the side, I can recreate this curve pretty easily. I think when I go to finally make these, once I've decided, I will lay this on top of the fabric that's going underneath and cut these two pieces at the same time. That way the curves definitely match. Okay, so now I need the piece that goes top and bottom. And the question is, so this is light, dark, light. Should I go light, dark, light like this is, or should I go dark, light, dark? And I mean, I could totally vary that. Let's look at a reference photo and see where these curves are supposed to end. I mean, can I just use this? No, I think my strips go on next. My side strips. All right, after consulting the reference photo, I have made these 2 side units. I'm gonna sew those on. It's gonna be a little bit smaller once I lose my seam allowance in there. So we'll sew those on. These pieces in the real reference photo stick out. And I might have cut this one too short. No might have about it. I cut this one too short, but this is my test. So we'll see. If it's within the 1/4 of an inch, maybe I can hide my sins, at least for this sample block. So these 3 units that come facing this way, let's call this a fence rail unit, the one that's facing this direction. It actually butts up and has this fabric next to it in the circle. This fabric goes all the way to the top of the circle in the reference photo of a real volleyball. So again, exactly how literal do I have to be for this to read as a volleyball? I mean, I'm not making a volleyball. This doesn't have to be an Olympic regulation thing. So let's see. If I put too many estimates and like rounding off the corners to make it easier to sew, it's not going to look like a volleyball. Okay, so now I have this. Let me put a background. So now I have this unit. So for the sake of ease, maybe I'll cut this straight and put my strip unit on top. And what I can do is put whatever is this color on the end of my strip unit. And that will give me the illusion. So I think, because this is meant to be curved, I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm going to make this strip unit for the tops and bottoms narrower. So imagine if that was a little bit skinnier. I'm going to make it the opposite. So I think I'm going to go dark, light, dark. And then maybe I'll put some of this on the ends to give it the illusion of going up. And because these are so short, I'm not going to bother with a curved seam because you won't see enough of it for it to matter. So far, I think this might be okay. We'll see. Okay, so I think this is going to be my top and bottom units. And I think I've got enough length here to split this in half, sew it on either side of my volleyball. And when I cut my circle, it should fill it out. So I've gone side piece color, no pun intended, and then dark, light, dark, because this volleyball, where did I put her, is light, dark, light on the main fence rail unit. So I'm going to do like opposite color pattern and then continue the side fabric up here. Let's see how that looks. These are a little bit wider. These are around 1.5 inches. I left this strip at 2.5. I think each one of these is going to end up being a little bit different, but I want to get the gist and see how this one turns out. And then I feel like these blocks will probably evolve as I go along, and some will be better. And if the first ones are so bad and so not congruent that they look stupid in the quilt, I just won't use those, and I'll keep making them until I have enough volleyball blocks that I like. This is how improving a template for something and coming up with it works. Sometimes you audition things, sometimes they work, sometimes that's a stepping stool to learn what is going to make a difference and be included in subsequent tries. And you just try and try again, and eventually you get to something that you're happy enough with both the way it looks and how easy or hard it is to come together. C'est la vie. Okay, so there is my strip unit. It's going to be the top and bottom of the volleyball, and it'll slot in there curved. So I think what I'm going to do first is just follow this edge and clean this into a straight line all the way across. Thank you to my friend from, I guess we first met right before middle school. So she's almost an elementary school friend, Mandy Prout, for teaching me that it is not a cross with a T, and that it is not sherbet with a bunch of extra R's in there. Shout out Mandy Prout for teaching correct grammar, spreading it like the gospel everywhere you go. Okay, so now this, I think that's close enough. This could actually maybe be even thinner to enhance the illusion that this piece and this piece are seamless, I think. If I made this a little bit bigger, then this flat would be longer and this would come out. So if this flat were longer, then these little points would push out to here. They're not going to be as bad as they look. When I lose my 1/4 inch to seam allowance, this will be a little bit closer than it was. So it won't be quite so whatever. So this was 3.5. If I went to, is 4 going to be too much? Is 4 going to look weird in there? And do I have to do an oval to pull off the illusion? I don't know. So first thing we're going to do is clean this up and put a straight edge and get rid of that salvage is the word I'm looking for. Yeah. And we'll sew that onto here. Should I do it? Oh, it's going to be the same either way. Let me find the middle. So I'm going to press and find a middle and press and find a middle so I can match those middles up. So this is where we are, and I think I either need to make this a little bit skinnier. Honestly, if I took a chunkier seam allowance, I'm not too far off. And I think I didn't cut these perfectly perpendicular to the center there. But it's not horrible. It is not horrible. So if I'm doing a 9 1/4, that means if I have a 5-inch length from this center line, that should give me plenty of room to trim my circle, which means this can be cut off and used for the other side. So let's cut some of that off. That is a little bit of a ballpark, a little bit generous, but where's my 5 line? But that's what I want. I would rather have too much. You want to have plenty so that my little circle fits in there. Okay, so now I have this, and it's already pressed to go here. See how that looks. Okay, so this is where we are so far. I'm going to move this down a little. So the question is, here in these corners, did I give myself enough of this white background fabric to fit my circle on there? And the answer is not really. Close though. So I will know in the future. Oh, I got it. Just barely got it. So I'll know in the future to make these just a little bit wider, these little white ears or whatever's my side fabric color. because you just don't want to cut it too close. Certainly if you don't have to. Why scrunch your bee-hole up for no apparent reason? And centering something on a circle is challenging. So I think I'm going to get my, when I go ahead and go into manufacturing mode on these, I'm going to get my cutting mat that has grids on it, and it'll make it a little bit more even. All right. I can cut this with the rotary cutter. Should I? Yeah, I'm going to trace this, because if I wiggle this around trying to make a full circle all the way around and lose my mark, I'm going to regret my life choices. But I don't want to cut it with scissors. That way, if I get off the line or I wiggle or something slides, I can go back to where I was with my line, my reference line. Okay, cutting, cutting, cutting. Whoopsie, slid a little bit. But I can reposition him. Now the question is, did I go all the way around? Okay, big reveal. Does this look like a volleyball? We'll find out. You know what? Not the worst thing I've ever seen. Okay, let's put it on a background where I can actually see it. I mean, not the worst thing I've ever seen. So let's think this through. I did, I alternated light, dark, light, and dark, light, dark. Do I like that? Or do I want to do all the same sequence? Like, should I have done light, dark, light up here? I definitely, so I'll tell you what I did. I had done binding last and I wasn't thinking about it. And when I sewed these, I had my 3/8 foot on there that I do binding with. And if I had used my 1/4 inch foot, this would be a little bit bigger, which means this flat would be a little bit wider. And I think it would have been a little more convincing because I wouldn't have these little peaky peaks that are slightly problematic. So that might be a big part of it. And if I had this a little bit closer, I would try to match when I'm putting this on. It's less important that this center matches this center. More important that I try to match this junction between side color and side color. I would make these wider so I have more grace when I'm cutting around. Because this one's pretty, this is going to be within the seam allowance, but I have a little notch here where I wasn't quite big enough for my circle. For a first try, off the cuff, approximation of a volleyball, I don't think it's the worst thing I've seen. Let's send some pictures to the friends and see what they think that is. This is take 2. And I had been using these pre-cut strips because I have them. And here's the thing. If I'm going to put this and do a curved seam here, I'm going to lose quite a bit in the curved seam. And I didn't have enough width this way. So I do have to factor into account that this is going to use up a lot more fabric to do this way. So let's line these up. Here is the thing about curved seams when you're doing this kind of co-cutting. The area where the curve is, you have to have both layers of fabric. So you have to overlap from the start to the finish of your curve. And this, I can't just cut like this and cut away chunks because I'm using the outside of this piece and the inside of this piece. So I can't like stray and veer off my line because I need this outer piece to be intact. So let's give this a go. Kind of my goal is to use a single bowl template, a single circle template. Oh, never mind. I can't do that and cut a circle. That's not going to work. So never mind. Whatever I was thinking, apparently I wasn't, is the answer to that question. So let me get this guy out of here. Ah, man, I did it the wrong direction. This was supposed to be the middle. Ugh. We'll erase that. That was 5 minutes of my life I won't get back. Okay, so number 1, I made a wrong cut. And number 2, since I sewed these together and they're going to be 4.5, I decided to upsize this unit to 4.5. So I just overlapped them. I put some reference lines so I could see where my overlap started and ended. And after I cut and peeled off, this was on top, so I peeled off this little scrap. I put my reference lines. You want to make sure that they are as close to 90 degrees from the cut as you can. So they're here, but as that cut is turning, you want to stay 90 degrees, and that will help you line up as you sew that curve. All right, so again, I would like to use only one circle template or only one bowl, as the case may be. So I'm hoping that this same curve will work for this as works for the outside. I do kind of like this because it gives me a little bit more control of where I cut those flats. Maybe that will end up working better for me. The peanut gallery was unkind. They said this looks like a planet or a porthole. So I want to make this center piece bow out more like a regular volleyball. I still think these end pieces are so short, it's not going to matter. I saved my scraps from where I messed up a cut on this because I am going to do, so this was light, dark, light, and then I did the opposite on the end. I'm going to try doing the same. So this one is actually dark, light, dark, and I'm going to do the same pattern up here, but skinnier. So we'll see the difference between take 1 and take 2, see if this added effort has a payoff and it looks more like a volleyball. So each iteration, I'm just trying to improve my method and improve my finished product a little bit and get to something that I can be happy doing several of and doesn't look stupid. We'll see. She's in middle school. Middle schoolers are cruel, so if it looks dumb, she will surely let me know. And now I need to do the other side. And remember, I'm going to end up cutting these flat on these ends. And I really don't know if it's going to work. So let me see how much I overlap this by, because I kind of just eyeballed it. I overlapped this side from sort of the apex of this to here. That's looking like about 2.5 inches, and that's pretty close because this is a 2.5 inch strip. So when I do this side, I'm going to try to, this whole thing is off kilter a little bit. Good thing this is scrappy and it'll be fine.